My wife laughed. You really think I'd ever introduce you to my rich business partners? Right in front of her friends. I don't want you begging them for money. She mocked. I just smiled and said, don't worry, you won't have to. Then I left without another word. Later that night, her best friend texted me something that made me sit up straight. Look, I've been to some pretty awkward dinners in my life. There was that Thanksgiving where my Uncle Frank got drunk and started arguing with the gravy boat. And there was the time my college roommate brought his new girlfriend who turned out to be a hardcore vegan to a steakhouse. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the nuclear-level cringe that went down at Clarissa's corporate dinner last Tuesday night. There's classy laughter, you know, the kind you hear at wine tastings where people pretend they can taste notes of oak with a hint of pretension. And then there's my wife just publicly humiliated me in front of her entire professional network laughter. Guess which one I got to experience? If you guessed the second one, congratulations, you win absolutely nothing except the knowledge that my life occasionally resembles a really bad reality TV show that got canceled after one episode for being too depressing. We were at Marcello's, this bougie Italian place downtown where they charge you $37 for 3 raviolis arranged in what they call deconstructed art on a plate the size of a manhole cover. The lighting was that dim, romantic kind that's supposed to make everyone look mysterious, but really just makes you squint at the menu like you're decoding ancient hieroglyphics. The whole place screamed, I have money and I need you to know about it, which, coincidentally, was exactly Clarissa's vibe for the past year and a half. This was her turf, her people, her moment to shine like the corporate goddess she'd become. My wife, Clarissa Chin Morrison. She hyphenated because apparently Morrison alone wasn't impressive enough for LinkedIn. Loved these events. She lived for showing off her success in front of her fancy tech investor friends, the kind of people who say things like, let's circle back on that synergy, without a trace of irony. These were venture capitalists who probably bathed in cryptocurrency and used $100 bills as napkins. Meanwhile, I was just the digital marketing guy, which in this crowd apparently translated to unemployed, but with Wi-Fi access, or possibly that charity case Clarissa keeps around for mysterious reasons, probably involving organ harvesting. I should have known something was off when she specifically requested I wear my nice blazer, the one I bought on sale at Macy's 3 years ago that she constantly side-eyed like it had personally offended her ancestors. She'd even laid it out on the bed that morning with a look that said, try not to embarrass me more than necessary. I'd laughed it off then. Joke's on me, literally. The dinner started normal enough. Well, normal for a gathering where people unironically discuss their stock portfolios over appetizers and measure their self-worth in Tesla shares. I was seated next to Clarissa, across from her business partner Marcus, a guy who looked like he got his personality from a corporate training video, and his wife Jennifer, who had the kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes, like she was perpetually reviewing your performance in her head and finding it lacking. Then there was David Chun, another investor in Clarissa's latest venture, and his boyfriend Andre, who at least seemed somewhat human and had actually asked me a genuine question about my work earlier. I was starting to think maybe this wouldn't be a total disaster. Spoiler alert, I have terrible instincts. The conversation flowed like expensive wine, which is to say it was smooth but left a bitter aftertaste. They talked about market disruptions, seed funding rounds, and something called blockchain integration that I'm 73% sure they were just making up as they went along. I nodded along, contributed where I could, made a few jokes that actually landed. Andre laughed at my comment about growth hacking sounding like something you'd need antibiotics for. I was holding my own, thank you very much. Then Jennifer, bless her soul or curse it, I haven't decided yet, turned to Clarissa with this sparkly, wine-drunk enthusiasm and asked, so Clarissa, is your husband joining us for the partners' dinner next month? The one at the Waldorf? It's going to be absolutely divine, and we'd love to have the whole family there. I should mention that I had no idea there was a partners' dinner. This was news to me. But sure, why would my wife mention a fancy dinner event to her own husband? That would be crazy, right? Communication in marriage? What a wild concept. The table went quiet for half a second. That pregnant pause where you know something either really good or catastrophically bad is about to happen. I looked at Clarissa, expecting her to smile and say something like, oh yes, we're both looking forward to it. or literally anything that acknowledged I was a human being with feelings sitting right there. Instead, she smirked. Actually smirked. Like she'd been waiting for this moment, rehearsing it in the mirror, perfecting the exact angle of condescension. She looked at Jennifer, then did this little laugh. You know the kind, that fake, tinkling sound that wealthy women make when they're about to say something absolutely devastating but want it to sound casual, and said, with the kind of clarity that could cut glass, "You really think I'd ever introduce him to my rich business partners? I don't want him begging them for money." Time stopped. I'm not being dramatic. Actual time stopped. The entire table went silent. Forks paused midair. Marcus's water glass froze halfway to his mouth. Even the waiter, who'd been approaching with our entrees, did this weird shuffle-stop thing like he'd walked into an invisible force field of awkwardness. Andre's eyes went wide. Jennifer's mouth formed a perfect O of shock. David actually coughed into his napkin. And me? I just sat there for exactly 2.5 seconds while my brain processed what had just happened. My wife, the woman I'd supported through 3 career changes, the woman whose hand I'd held during her father's funeral, the woman who'd moved into my apartment 2 years ago because she was between places, had just publicly announced that I was essentially a financial liability and a social embarrassment. The thing about humiliation is that it hits you in waves. First wave, shock. Second wave, hurt. Third wave, rage. But if you wait long enough, there's a fourth wave, and that's the one where you realize you have a choice. You can either crumble, make a scene, prove everyone's low expectations right, or you can do something radical. You can keep your dignity. So I smiled. Not a fake smile, not a hurt smile, but a genuine, calm, absolutely done with this nonsense smile. I set down my fork with deliberate precision, wiped my mouth with my napkin like I was in a period drama, and said in the clearest, calmest voice I could manage, "Don't worry, you won't have to." Then I stood up. The chair made that satisfying scraping sound against the marble floor. I pulled my phone from my pocket, dropped my napkin on my plate like it was a resignation letter from this entire circus of a marriage, and walked toward the exit. The whole restaurant seemed to tilt slightly, or maybe that was just my world shifting on its axis. Behind me, I heard Clarissa's voice, sharp with panic, "Babe, wait." But I was already past the host's stand, already pushing through the door into the cool night air, already breathing like a free man. If confidence were currency, that exit made me a millionaire. My actual bank account, still decidedly middle class. But my self-respect? That just got a serious deposit, with interest. 2 years of marriage, and somehow, I completely missed the memo that I'd married the CEO of Disrespect Incorporated, a Fortune 500 company specializing in gaslighting, condescension, and making your spouse feel like they're auditioning for a role they'll never get. The benefits package apparently included zero emotional support, negative vacation days, and a severance plan that involved public humiliation at overpriced Italian restaurants. But let me back up, because Clarissa wasn't always this way. Or maybe she was, and I was just too busy being in love to notice the red flags that were basically forming a parade route right in front of my face. Love is blind, they say. In my case, love was blind, deaf, and apparently suffered from severe cognitive impairment. I met Clarissa Chun 2 years and 4 months ago at TechCrunch Disrupt in San Francisco. I was there covering the event for one of my digital marketing clients, a startup that made an app nobody needed but everyone pretended was revolutionary. You know the type. It's like Uber, but for plants, or some nonsense like that. Clarissa was there as a junior partner at a venture capital firm, prowling the convention center in a power suit that probably cost more than my rent, looking for the next big thing to throw money at. She was brilliant, I'll give her that. The woman could analyze a business model faster than I could order coffee. Smart, bold, charismatic, and possessed with the kind of ambition that could power a small city. She was also allergic to humility, but I mistook that for confidence at the time. Rookie mistake. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance. Confidence lifts you up, arrogance steps on your neck to get higher. We met at the after party, one of those networking events where everyone pretends to be casual while desperately trying to exchange business cards and LinkedIn profiles. I was at the bar, making a joke to the bartender about how the complimentary wine tasted like regret mixed with broken dreams, and she laughed. Like, actually laughed. Not that polite corporate chuckle, but a real, genuine laugh that made her eyes crinkle at the corners. That's the most honest thing I've heard all day, she said, sliding onto the bar stool next to mine. Everyone here is so busy bullshitting about disruption and innovation that they've forgotten how to be real people. I liked her immediately. We spent the next 3 hours talking about everything except work, music, travel, that weird phenomenon where you can never find matching socks, the conspiracy theory that pigeons are actually government drones. She loved my wit, or so she said. I loved her ambition. She had this energy, this drive that made you feel like anything was possible. She talked about changing the world, and for a brief, shining moment, I believed we could do it together. Within 2 months, she'd moved into my apartment in Brooklyn. I had a decent one-bedroom in Park Slope that I'd been renting for 3 years. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. It had character, which is New York real estate code for small and slightly falling apart, but in a charming way. I love that place. It had my beat-up leather couch that I'd found on Craigslist, my collection of vintage movie posters, my bookshelf that was definitely a fire hazard but organized exactly how I liked it. Clarissa moved in with 2 suitcases and a mission. Within a week, my leather couch was on the curb and replaced with something she called a mid-century modern statement piece that cost $3,000 and was so uncomfortable it felt like sitting on a board of directors meeting. My movie posters came down, too juvenile, and were replaced with abstract art that looked like someone had sneezed paint onto canvas and called it genius. My bookshelf got reorganized by color instead of author because apparently, that's what visionary people do. Babe, we need to elevate our space, she'd say, holding up paint swatches with names like Ethereal Whisper and Contemplative Fog. This apartment has so much potential. We just need to unlock it. I thought she meant we, as in us, together, partners. Turns out she meant I, as in her, dictator, and I was just the guy paying half the rent on a place that no longer felt like home. But I went along with it because I thought that's what you do when you're in love. You compromise, you adapt, you let your girlfriend turn your apartment into something that belongs in an IKEA catalog. The wedding was small, just our close friends and family at City Hall, followed by dinner at this little bistro in the West Village. No big reception, no DJ playing Cupid Shuffle, just intimate and perfect. Or so I thought. Looking back, I realized Clarissa kept it small because she didn't want to mix her professional life with her personal life, which is code for I don't want my rich friends to see that I married someone who shops at Target. Still, I believed we were equals. We had our routines, our rhythm. Saturday morning grocery runs where we'd debate the merits of different brands of pasta sauce like it was a presidential election. Wine nights on the couch. Sorry, the statement piece, where we'd binge-watch cooking shows and criticize the contestants' plating techniques. Sunday morning walks through Prospect Park where we'd grab bagels and plan our future like it was this beautiful, collaborative project. I thought we had rhythm. Turns out, I was dancing solo while she was already choreographing a different number with someone else. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The warning signs were there, glowing neon and impossible to miss if I hadn't been wearing rose-colored glasses superglued to my face. She never invited me to her networking events. Not once. It's just business, she'd say with a dismissive wave whenever I'd ask if I could tag along. You'd be bored out of your mind. It's just a bunch of suits talking about market cap and equity rounds. Trust me, you're better off staying home. And like an idiot, I trusted her. I stayed home while she went to dinners, galas, weekend retreats in the Hamptons. The partners only, she'd explain, kissing me on the cheek before heading out in a dress that cost more than our monthly utilities. Spouses aren't invited to this one. It's a work thing. Yeah, a work thing. Business of the private kind, apparently. The kind of business that involves hotel rooms and matching robes and captions about synergy. But again, I'm jumping ahead. Her friends started changing too. The ones I'd met at the beginning, normal people with normal jobs who liked normal things like brunch and complaining about subway delays, slowly got phased out. Replaced by people with titles like Chief Innovation Officer and Executive Managing Director of Strategic Partnerships, which I'm pretty sure are just fancy ways of saying, I have money and need everyone to know about it. She stopped asking about my day, stopped caring about my clients, my projects, my wins. When I'd tell her about landing a new account or finishing a successful campaign, she'd nod absently while scrolling through her phone, throwing out a distracted, "That's great, babe," that had all the enthusiasm of someone reading the terms and conditions on a software update. But the worst part? I started believing her narrative about me, that my work wasn't as important as hers, that digital marketing was somehow less legitimate than venture capital, that I should be grateful she even acknowledged my existence at social events. On the rare occasions she actually brought me along, I became smaller, quieter. I stopped talking about my achievements because they seemed insignificant compared to her latest deal or investment. I started introducing myself as Clarissa's husband before mentioning my own name, like I was an accessory to her success story rather than my own person. Looking back now, with the benefit of hindsight and a healthy dose of anger, I can see exactly what happened. I didn't marry a partner. I married someone who needed an audience, a supporting character in her one-woman show about climbing the corporate ladder while stepping on everyone beneath her designer heels. But that night at Marcello's, when she publicly announced that I was too embarrassing to introduce to her rich friends, something inside me finally snapped back into place, like a bone that had been set wrong and suddenly realigned. The fog lifted, and I could see clearly for the first time in months. I hadn't changed. She had. Or maybe she'd always been this way, and I'd just been too busy being in love to notice I was in love with an illusion. That night, after my dramatic exit from Marcello's that would have made even the most seasoned soap opera actor proud, I went back to our apartment and did what any rational adult would do in my situation. I sat on the uncomfortable $3,000 statement piece that used to be my beloved Craigslist couch, cracked open a beer, and stared at my phone like it was a crystal ball that might reveal the secrets of the universe, or at least explain what the hell had just happened to my marriage. I waited for her to text. An apology, maybe. Sorry I publicly eviscerated you in front of my entire professional network, babe, or even a simple "we need to talk" would have sufficed. Hell, at that point, I would have settled for a "you left your credit card at the restaurant" just to acknowledge that I existed and hadn't imagined the entire humiliating disaster. Nothing, just silence. The kind of silence that's louder than any argument, the kind that fills up your apartment and sits on your chest and makes you question every single decision that led you to this exact moment. My phone sat there on the coffee table. Sorry, the artisanal reclaimed wood surface piece, mocking me with its complete lack of notifications. I checked it approximately every 47 seconds like some kind of deranged lab rat hitting a button for a reward that wasn't coming. Maybe she'd texted and my phone had glitched. Maybe she'd called and somehow all the cellular towers in New York had simultaneously malfunctioned. Maybe I'd accidentally blocked her number in a fugue state. Spoiler alert, none of these things had happened. She just genuinely wasn't reaching out. Around 10:30, I started crafting mental responses to the apology text that definitely wasn't coming. I went through all the stages. The angry response where I told her exactly what I thought of her and her pretentious friends. The dignified response where I calmly explained why her behavior was unacceptable. The petty response where I just sent back a gif of someone laughing. I had a whole collection of imaginary text conversations that would never happen, which is either sad or pathetic or both. Probably both. At 11:52 p.m., just as I was seriously considering whether drinking a second beer on a Tuesday night made me an alcoholic or just appropriately traumatized, my phone finally buzzed. I lunged for it with the desperation of a man who'd been stranded on a desert island spotting a rescue plane, nearly knocking over my beer in the process. But it wasn't her. It was Leah Martinez, Clarissa's best friend since college. Well, former best friend, as I'd soon discover, because apparently even friendships have their breaking points when it comes to tolerating complete bullshit. The text was simple and ominous. Hey, you awake? You should probably call me. My stomach dropped faster than the stock market in 2008. Leah wasn't the drama type. She was calm, measured, the kind of person who actually uses coasters and returns her shopping cart to the designated area and probably flosses twice a day. If Leah was texting me at midnight with an urgent message, something was seriously wrong. Or in this case, something had been wrong for a while, and she was finally ready to blow the whistle. I called her immediately because I'm not a monster who ignores cryptic late-night texts from concerned friends, and also because at that point, I was desperate for literally any human interaction that didn't involve being humiliated. She picked up on the first ring. Hey, she said, and her voice had that quality to it, that slight crack that told me she'd been debating whether to make this call for a long time. I'm so sorry about tonight. I heard what happened. Jessica texted me. She was at the table next to yours. Of course she was. Because my humiliation needed witnesses who could spread it through the social network like wildfire. Fantastic. Yeah, well, I said, trying to sound casual and probably failing miserably. It was definitely a memorable evening. Really livened up the dinner conversation. I'm thinking of offering my services as entertainment for corporate events. Hire me to get publicly roasted by your spouse. Great icebreaker. Leah didn't laugh. That's when I knew this conversation was about to get worse. Listen, she said, and I could hear her moving around, probably pacing her apartment the way she did when she was stressed. I can't keep quiet anymore. I've been going back and forth about this for weeks, and after tonight, after hearing what she said to you. She took a deep breath. Clarissa's been seeing someone. The words hit me like a truck, except trucks are faster and probably more merciful. For a second, I couldn't process it. Seeing someone. Like seeing someone. As in romantically? As in cheating? As in the woman who'd just humiliated me for being financially beneath her had also been stepping out on our marriage? What? Was all I could manage, which wasn't my most eloquent moment, but give me a break. I was having what experts call a really bad day. Her business partner, Leah, continued, and I could hear the anger in her voice now, the frustration of someone who'd been keeping a toxic secret and was finally letting it out. His name's Elliot Shaw. You know, the guy she's always having those late-night meetings with? The one she went to that conference in Miami with last month? Yeah, it's been going on for months. Since at least January, maybe longer. January. We'd celebrated our second anniversary in February. She'd gotten me a watch, a nice one, actually, with an inscription on the back that said "Forever Yours." I was wearing it right now. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife, serve it at Marcello's, and charge $40 a plate for it. I almost laughed. I mean, what else do you do when your world is imploding? The business partner. Of course it was the business partner. It was so cliché it almost wrapped back around to being creative. Next you'll tell me they fell in love during a PowerPoint presentation about quarterly projections. Elliot Shaw. I repeated, letting the name roll around in my mouth like poison. The guy from her firm? The one with the... I searched my memory for the few times she'd mentioned him. The Tesla and the stupid hair gel? That's the one, Leah confirmed. And it gets worse. Because apparently the universe had decided that tonight was the night to just pile it all on, really go for the jugular. She tells everyone you're broke and only with her for her money. That you'd embarrass her if her partners met you, which is why she never brings you around. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. Embarrass her? I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. I wanted to go full Hulk and smash that stupid statement piece couch into kindling. But instead, I just sat there, processing the information like a computer trying to run too many programs at once. I pay half the bills, I said quietly, more to myself than to Leah. I bought my own socks this morning. I have a job. I have clients. I'm not some. I couldn't even finish the sentence because the absurdity was overwhelming. I know, Leah said gently. Everyone who actually knows you knows that. But Clarissa's been crafting this narrative, spinning this story where you're this deadweight she's stuck with out of pity or obligation or God knows what. And the people in her circle, they just eat it up because it makes for good gossip and none of them have bothered to actually meet you and form their own opinions. The pieces were falling into place now, creating a picture so ugly I wished I could unsee it. That's why she never invited me to events. That's why she'd reacted so strongly when Jennifer suggested I come to the partners' dinner. That's why she'd been so dismissive of my work, my accomplishments, my entire existence. She'd been rewriting our story, casting herself as the successful martyr and me as the loser husband she was too kind to dump. How long have you known? I asked, and I wasn't even mad at Leah. I was just curious. In that detached way you get when you're so far past anger you've entered some kind of emotional no man's land. About the affair? 2 months, she admitted. I saw them together at a restaurant in Soho. They didn't see me, but they were. There was no mistaking what was going on. Hand-holding, kissing, the whole 9 yards. I confronted her the next day, and she begged me not to tell you. Said she was going to end it, that it was a mistake, that she loved you and was just going through something. She paused, but she didn't end it. And after tonight, after watching her humiliate you like that, I couldn't do it anymore. You deserve to know the truth. I sat there in my too expensive, too uncomfortable apartment that no longer felt like mine, holding a phone that had just delivered news that my marriage was even more dead than I'd thought, and I felt something unexpected. Not sadness, not rage, not even surprise. I felt relief, like someone had finally confirmed what some part of me had known all along, but had been too scared or stupid or optimistic to acknowledge. My marriage was over. Had been over for a while, probably. And now I had a choice. I could either crumble under the weight of this betrayal, or I could do something about it. Leah, I said, and my voice was steady now, clear. Thank you for telling me. I mean it. What are you going to do? She asked quietly. I looked around the apartment at all of Clarissa's improvements and statement pieces and evidence of a life I'd been living for someone else's benefit. I'm going to get my life back, I said, starting tomorrow. And I meant it. The next day, I woke up with that special kind of clarity that only comes from having your entire worldview shattered and then reassembled overnight. You know that feeling when you've been looking at one of those optical illusion pictures and suddenly your brain flips and you can finally see the hidden image? Yeah, it was like that, except the hidden image was my wife's betrayal, and it was way less fun than finding the dolphin in the pattern. I wasn't sad. That would come later, probably during some random Tuesday while I was buying milk or watching a commercial with a happy couple in it. But right now, in this moment, sitting at my kitchen table with my third cup of coffee and approximately 2 hours of sleep under my belt, I wasn't sad. I was curious. Scientifically, methodically curious. I needed facts. Evidence. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind and that my marriage had actually imploded in spectacular fashion. Also, I'll be honest, a small, petty part of me wanted ammunition. Not for revenge, exactly, but for protection. Because I knew Clarissa, and I knew that when cornered, she had a tendency to rewrite history faster than George Orwell's worst nightmare. By the time she was done spinning this story, I'd somehow be the villain who'd driven her into the arms of another man through my terrible crimes of being middle class and shopping at Target. So I called Troy Chin. No relation to Clarissa, thank God, though the shared last name had made for some confusing moments at parties. Troy was my buddy from college, an IT wizard who dropped out sophomore year to work for a tech startup and now made more money than all of us combined, while wearing hoodies and eating ramen for fun, not out of necessity. The man could hack into pretty much anything, though he preferred to use his powers for good, or at least for morally ambiguous situations involving helping his friends. He picked up on the third ring, sounding groggy. Dude, it's like 9 in the morning. This better be good. Did someone die? Are you dying? Is this about that weird mole again because I told you? I'm not a doctor. Clarissa's cheating on me. I interrupted, because sometimes you just need to rip the Band-Aid off. And I need your help. There was a pause. Then I heard rustling and what sounded like Troy falling out of bed. Holy shit. Okay, I'm awake now. Tell me everything. I gave him the abbreviated version. The dinner, the humiliation, Leah's phone call, the whole sordid tale of my marriage's demise. To his credit, Troy listened without interrupting, which was impressive because the man normally had the attention span of a caffeinated squirrel. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. Man, that's brutal. I never liked her, you know. Too much hairspray and ambition. Dangerous combination. He paused. So what do you need from me? You want me to hack her email? Because I will. I absolutely will. Just say the word. No, I said, because despite everything, I wasn't ready to cross into full-on illegal territory. But remember like 6 months ago when she asked me to link her business files to my iCloud? For backup purposes? I could practically hear Troy's grin through the phone. Oh, dude, are you telling me you have legal access to her cloud storage? Is it legal if she asked me to set it up? I asked, genuinely curious about the ethics here. Legal enough, Troy said, which was not exactly a ringing endorsement from a legal standpoint, but good enough for my current moral flexibility. You're not hacking anything. You're accessing files that you have legitimate credentials for. It's like she gave you a key to her house and then forgot you had it. Exactly, I said, feeling slightly better about what I was about to do. So walk me through this. How do I access everything? Troy launched into an explanation about shared drives, cloud storage, and digital footprints that was way more detailed than I needed, but which I appreciated anyway, because it made this feel more legitimate, more official. Like I was conducting an investigation rather than snooping through my cheating wife's files. Semantics matter when you're having a moral crisis. Basically, Troy summarized after 5 minutes of technical jargon. If she synced her files to your iCloud for backup, you can access them through any device logged into your account. Just go to iCloud.com, log in, and look for the shared folders. They should all be there. Photos, documents, everything she didn't specifically encrypt or hide. And she wouldn't know I'm looking? I asked, because the last thing I needed was a notification popping up on her phone that said, "Your husband is currently viewing evidence of your affair." Nah, you're good. It's your account. You're just accessing your own storage. She's the guest here, technically. Troy paused. This is beautiful, by the way. I mean, terrible for you, but beautiful from a digital karma perspective. She literally handed you the evidence. I thanked Troy, promised to update him later, and hung up. Then I sat there for a minute, staring at my laptop like it was Pandora's box. Once I looked, there was no going back. I'd have confirmation. Evidence. Proof that my marriage was as dead as my hopes for a peaceful resolution. But here's the thing about curiosity and betrayal. They're a hell of a combination. I opened my laptop, navigated to iCloud.com, logged in with my credentials, and there it was. A folder labeled Clarissa Work_Backup. Genius name, babe. Really encrypted that one. I clicked it open. The first thing I saw was a subfolder labeled Events, which seemed innocent enough until I opened it, and found myself staring at approximately 200 photos that definitely weren't business-related unless business had suddenly become a euphemism for affair. There they were, Clarissa and Elliot Shaw, the business partner with the stupid hair gel and the Tesla. Photos of them at fancy restaurants I'd never been to, wine glasses raised in toasts I'd never been part of. Photos at what looked like a yacht party, because of course there was a yacht, with Clarissa laughing in a way I hadn't seen her laugh in months, maybe years. Photos at hotel suites with views that probably cost more per night than my monthly salary. And then there were the really damning ones. The kind that left absolutely no room for interpretation or the "we're just colleagues" defense. Elliot's arm around her waist. Clarissa kissing his cheek. The two of them in matching white robes, hotel robes, clearly, on what appeared to be a balcony overlooking the ocean. One photo even had a caption, because apparently my wife had decided to document her affair like it was a vacation scrapbook, celebrating Synergy Redheart. Synergy. She'd actually written Synergy. I laughed out loud, a bitter, slightly unhinged sound that echoed in my empty apartment. Yeah, Synergy. Great word for adultery. Very professional. Very business appropriate. I'm sure that'll look fantastic in the divorce proceedings. I kept scrolling, my morbid curiosity fully engaged now. There were receipts, dinner receipts, hotel receipts, receipts for jewelry that I'd never seen her wear at home. There were text message screenshots between her and Elliot, flirty and intimate and absolutely inappropriate for people who were supposedly just business partners. There were calendar entries for meetings that were clearly not meetings unless meeting was code for afternoon delight at the Mandarin Oriental. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, irrefutable, and I downloaded every single file, every photo, every receipt, every message. I created a new folder on my desktop and labeled it proof_that_karma_works_draft1, because if I didn't make jokes about this, I was going to start throwing things, and I couldn't afford to replace my laptop right now. The whole process took about 45 minutes. 45 minutes of clicking through the documented destruction of my marriage, archived and organized with the same efficiency Clarissa brought to everything she did. At least she was thorough, I'll give her that. If you're going to cheat on your husband, might as well keep meticulous records. Really commit to it. When I was done, I sat back and stared at the folder on my desktop. 2.3 gigabytes of betrayal, neatly compressed and ready for. What exactly? What was I going to do with this? Send it to her parents? Post it on social media? Confront her with a PowerPoint presentation of her affair? Really lean into the business aesthetic she loved so much? No, I was going to keep it safe, back it up in multiple locations, and use it when the time was right. Because I knew Clarissa, and I knew that she'd try to spin this, to make herself the victim, to paint me as the bad guy who'd somehow forced her into the arms of a man with better hair gel and a more impressive stock portfolio. But now I had proof. Evidence. The truth in digital form, time-stamped and geotagged and completely impossible to deny. I texted Troy. Got everything. You were right. It's beautiful in the worst possible way. He responded immediately. Screenshots, or it didn't happen. JK. Well, not really JK, but I understand if you don't want to share. What's your next move? I looked around my apartment. Her apartment? Really, since she'd redesigned every inch of it. I thought about the dinner, the humiliation, the months of feeling small and insignificant. I thought about Elliot Shaw and his stupid yacht and his matching robes and his synergy. I'm getting my life back, I typed, starting with my couch. Troy sent back a gif of someone setting a couch on fire, which wasn't exactly what I meant, but I appreciated the sentiment. I closed my laptop, grabbed my phone, and started making a list. First item, call the landlord. Second item, figure out how to legally evict your cheating wife from an apartment that's in your name. Third item, buy a new couch, one that's actually comfortable and doesn't cost more than a used car. The curiosity had been satisfied. The evidence had been collected. Now it was time for action. The next afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Clarissa. Her first communication since the dinner disaster 2 nights ago. And let me tell you, the anticipation had been killing me. Would it be an apology? A confession? A heartfelt admission that she'd been a terrible human being and wanted to make amends? Nope. It was, can we talk? I think you overreacted last night. Overreacted. I read that word about 17 times, each time feeling my blood pressure tick up a few notches. I'd been publicly humiliated, discovered my wife was cheating on me, and spent the previous day downloading evidence of her affair from cloud storage like some kind of discount private investigator. But sure, I'd overreacted. Getting roasted in front of her entire professional network and then calmly walking out apparently counts as an overreaction if you leave before dessert. My bad. Should I have stayed for the tiramisu while she continued to eviscerate my character? Would that have been the appropriate response? I took a deep breath, counted to 10, then counted to 10 again because the first time didn't work, and typed back, sure. Daily Grind. 3 p.m. Daily Grind was our usual coffee shop, a hipster place in Brooklyn that served overpriced lattes with foam art and played indie music that sounded like someone gently weeping into a ukulele. We'd had our first date there, back when I thought Clarissa was the love of my life and not the future destroyer of my emotional well-being. The nostalgia felt fitting. Might as well end this relationship where it began, completing the circle of dysfunction. She agreed immediately, which told me she was either genuinely remorseful or, more likely, confident she could talk her way out of this. Clarissa had always been good with words, with crafting narratives that made her look good and everyone else look unreasonable. I'd seen her do it in business meetings, turning potential disasters into learning opportunities and failed projects into pivots. But this time, I had receipts. Literally, hotel receipts with her name on them. I showed up at 2:55 p.m. because punctuality is a virtue, and also because I wanted to claim the good table, the one in the corner with decent lighting and a clear view of the door. Strategic positioning matters when you're about to have the conversation that ends your marriage. I ordered my usual coffee, a simple medium roast with cream, none of that oat milk, turmeric, adaptogenic mushroom nonsense that cost $8 and tasted like regret. Clarissa arrived at 3:17 p.m., 17 minutes late, which was so typical it almost made me laugh. She'd always operated on what I called Clarissa time, a flexible concept where schedules were suggestions and other people's time was less valuable than hers. She was wearing the red blazer, the one I'd bought her 3 years ago for her first big promotion at the firm, the one I'd saved up for, spent way too much money on, presented to her with genuine pride and love. Of course she'd wear that. Psychological warfare disguised as fashion choice. She slid into the chair across from me with a practiced smile, the kind she probably used on difficult clients or investors who needed convincing. Hey, she said softly, like we were old friends catching up and not a married couple whose relationship had imploded spectacularly over wine and ravioli. Hey, I replied, taking a sip of my coffee and maintaining eye contact. I'd learned from every legal drama I'd ever watched that maintaining eye contact shows confidence. Also, I wanted to see her face when I dropped the bomb. Look, she started, leaning forward with what I'm sure she thought was an earnest expression. About the other night. I was drunk and stupid, okay? Those dinners always stress me out. Everyone's always trying to one-up each other, and I had like 3 glasses of wine on an empty stomach. She reached across the table like she was going to take my hand, but I pulled back, wrapping both hands around my coffee cup instead. So your defense is that alcohol made you announce to a table full of people that I'm too embarrassing to introduce to your business partners? I asked calmly. That I'd beg them for money? That's the story we're going with. She had the decency to look uncomfortable, at least. I didn't mean it like that. It came out wrong. You know how I get when I'm drinking. I say things I don't mean, and everyone at that table knows not to take me seriously when I'm being sarcastic. Clarissa, I interrupted, because I could feel her building momentum, getting ready to launch into full spin doctor mode. Who's Elliot? The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might actually pass out. It was almost impressive, watching someone go from confident to terrified in 0.3 seconds. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish trying to figure out how to breathe on land. What? She finally managed, but her voice cracked on that single syllable. I pulled out my phone. Bless you, smartphone technology, and slowly, deliberately slid it across the table. On the screen was one of my favorite photos from her cloud backup. Clarissa and Elliot on what appeared to be a yacht, his arm around her waist, both of them wearing sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly insurance payment, with the caption Celebrating Synergy Red Heart, displayed in all its ironic glory. Elliot Shaw, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. Your business partner. The guy you've been having late-night meetings with. The one you went to Miami with last month for that conference that apparently involved matching hotel robes and oceanfront balconies. Ring any bells? She stared at the phone like it was a venomous snake that had suddenly appeared on the table. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for it, then thought better of it and pulled back. It's not what it looks like, she whispered, which has to be the most cliché response in the history of infidelity. Like, come on. You couldn't even be original in your denial? Really? I leaned back in my chair, suddenly feeling more relaxed than I had in days. There's something liberating about finally having the upper hand in a conversation. Because what it looks like is two people celebrating synergy in matching robes at a hotel. Which, by the way, is a fascinating choice of words. Synergy. Very professional. Very business appropriate. I especially enjoyed that one, along with the approximately 199 other photos documenting your affair. How did you? She started, then stopped, realization dawning. The cloud backup. The cloud backup you asked me to set up 6 months ago, I confirmed. Really thoughtful of you, actually. Saved me the trouble of hiring a private investigator. Though I have to say, your organizational system is excellent. Very thorough documentation. Really committed to the project. She opened her mouth, closed it, and I watched her cycle through about 15 different expressions: shock, anger, fear, calculation, before landing on tears. Actual tears, streaming down her face, her mascara starting to run in those dramatic lines that probably looked artistic in movies, but just looked desperate in a coffee shop at 3:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, and her voice had that quiver that I'd fallen for so many times before. The vulnerability, the raw emotion. But this time, I could see the performance in it. The calculated choice to cry, to play the victim, to make this about her pain instead of her choices. Oh, I'm not hurt, I said, and it was only partially a lie. Sure, there was hurt buried somewhere under the anger and betrayal and bitter satisfaction, but right now, in this moment, I felt something better. I felt motivated, energized, free. You're not. She looked up, confused, like this wasn't going according to her script. Nope. I took another sip of coffee, letting the silence stretch between us. I mean, don't get me wrong. Finding out your wife has been cheating on you for months while telling everyone you're a broke embarrassment definitely stings. But you know what hurt more? Believing I wasn't good enough. Believing your narrative about me being less than. Shrinking myself to fit into your story. That's not. I never meant, she tried, but I held up a hand. You did. You absolutely did. And the crazy thing is, I let you. I bought into it. But that dinner, that beautiful, catastrophic disaster of a dinner where you humiliated me in front of everyone, that was the best thing you could have done for me, because it woke me up. I stood up, leaving my half-finished coffee on the table. Some exits require full dramatic effect. So thank you, actually. Thank you for being so spectacularly awful that I finally saw clearly. Thank you for being careless enough to back up your affair photos to my cloud storage. And thank you for wearing that red blazer today. Really brings back memories of when I thought you were someone worth loving. Wait, she said, standing up too, reaching for my arm. Where are you going? We need to talk about this. We can work through this. I gently pulled my arm away. No, we really can't. Because here's the thing, Clarissa, I'm done. Done apologizing for not being rich enough, successful enough, impressive enough for you. Done pretending your disrespect was just your personality. Done being married to someone who values me less than her stock portfolio. You can't just leave, she said, and now the tears were gone, replaced by anger. There it was, the real Clarissa. We're married. You can't just walk away. Watch me, I said. Oh, and by the way, pack your stuff. You've got until Friday. Her eyes widened. You can't kick me out of our apartment. Actually, I can. Lease is in my name. Always has been. You moved into my place, remember? Before you redecorated it into something from a lifestyle magazine nobody actually reads. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. One more thing. Elliot might want to know you're married. I hear transparency is important in business partnerships. And with that, I walked out of Daily Grind, leaving Clarissa standing there speechless for probably the first time in her life. The bell above the door chimed as I left, and I swear it sounded like applause. I'd already talked to our landlord that morning, before the coffee shop confrontation, because I'm a planner and also because I wanted to make sure I wasn't about to commit some kind of illegal eviction that would land me in housing court explaining to a judge why I'd kicked out my cheating wife. Turns out, when the lease is entirely in your name and your spouse isn't on any official documentation, you have significantly more power than you'd think. Who knew? Well, Mr. Kowalski knew. Our landlord, a 60-something Polish guy who'd seen enough tenant drama in his 40 years of property management to write a book about it. Your wife, he'd said over the phone, his thick accent making the word wife sound like an accusation. She is not on lease. Never has been. I remember when she moved in, you tell me is temporary, maybe 6 months. That was 2 years ago. He paused. She is trouble, yes? I can tell. Too many shoes in hallway. Nobody needs that many shoes. I'd laughed despite everything because he was right. Clarissa had approximately 400 pairs of shoes, give or take, most of which lived in our hallway closet like some kind of expensive leather army. Yeah, Mr. Kowalski. She's trouble. I need to know what my options are if I want her to move out. You give notice, he'd said simply. 30 days is nice, but not required if she is not on lease. Technically, she is guest. Very expensive guest with too many shoes, but still guest. You tell her to leave, she leaves. She makes problem, you call police for trespassing. Is your apartment, your name, your rent, your rules. Armed with this information and a newfound sense of legal righteousness, I'd met Clarissa at the coffee shop and dropped the eviction bomb. The look on her face when I told her to pack up by Friday had been worth every uncomfortable conversation that was sure to follow. She tried calling me approximately 47 times after I left Daily Grind. I ignored all of them. She'd texted me another 36 times, ranging from angry, "You can't do this," to desperate, "Please, can we just talk like adults?" to manipulative, "I'm having a panic attack, I need you." I responded to exactly one message, the one where she claimed she had nowhere to go. That's not my problem. You have until Friday at 6 p.m. After that, your stuff goes to storage and the locks get changed. Was I being harsh? Maybe. But you know what's also harsh? Cheating on your spouse for months, humiliating them publicly, and then expecting them to just roll over and take it because you've decided to cry about consequences. Thursday morning, Leah texted me. Clarissa called me crying. Asked me to help her pack. I said yes because honestly, I want to make sure she actually leaves. That okay? More than okay, I replied. Thank you. Seriously. No problem, she wrote back. I've been wanting to tell her off for months. This gives me an excuse to do it while being helpful. Win-win. I decided to stay at Troy's place for those 3 days, partly because I didn't want to be there during the packing process and partly because I didn't trust myself not to say something I'd regret. Also, Troy had a PlayStation 5 and a collection of craft beers that seemed appropriate for processing the end of a marriage. Dude, you're handling this way better than I would. Troy said on Wednesday night, as we played some zombie survival game that felt oddly therapeutic. If I found out my wife was cheating, I'd probably set all her stuff on fire and post the video on YouTube. Tempting, I admitted. But arson seems like it would complicate the divorce proceedings. Fair point, he said, shooting a virtual zombie in the head. Still, you're being very mature about this. It's actually kind of disturbing. When's the breakdown happening? I want to be prepared. Should I buy tissues? Ice cream? A punching bag? I'm not going to break down, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. I'm just done, you know? Like, completely done. She killed any feelings I had left the moment she said I'd embarrass her in front of her rich friends. Troy paused the game and looked at me. You know what? Good. She's trash. Expensive, well-dressed trash, but trash nonetheless. You deserve someone who doesn't make you feel like you're not enough. Thanks, man, I said, genuinely touched by the sentiment, even though Troy had the emotional intelligence of a golden retriever most of the time. Friday arrived with all the anticipation of Christmas morning, except instead of presents, I was getting my apartment back. Leah had been texting me updates throughout the day like a play-by-play sports commentator. 10 a.m. We've started packing. She's crying over photo albums. I told her she should have thought about memories before making new ones with Elliot. She's not speaking to me now. 12 p.m. She wants to take the couch. I told her absolutely not. That's your couch. She just replaced it. She's arguing that she paid for it. I said, cool. Take the receipt and the couch can meet her at her new place. She's pouting. 2 p.m. The couch is staying. Victory. Also, did you know she has like 8 different face cream moisturizers? 8. Each costs more than my car payment. No wonder she needs a rich boyfriend. 4 p.m. We're almost done. She keeps asking where you are. I keep telling her it's none of her business. She tried to take your coffee maker. I physically removed it from her hands. You're welcome. 5:30 p.m. Everything's packed. She's sitting on the floor crying. I feel bad for like 2 seconds. Then I remember the dinner incident, and I'm over it. Should I wait with her until 6 or can I leave? I texted back. You can leave. Thank you for everything. I owe you dinner, drinks, and possibly a kidney. Just dinner is fine, she replied. Maybe drinks. Definitely not a kidney. See you later. At 6:15 p.m., I got a text from Clarissa. I'm gone. I hope you're happy. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I finished my beer, said goodbye to Troy, and drove back to my apartment. My apartment, not ours, not hers, mine, with a mixture of excitement and dread that felt like the emotional equivalent of drinking expired milk. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The apartment was empty. Well, not completely empty, but significantly emptier than it had been 3 days ago. The statement piece couch was still there, thank God. I'd meant what I said about it being uncomfortable, but it was mine now, and I could sell it or donate it or turn it into firewood if I wanted. Her abstract art was gone from the walls, leaving behind rectangular shadows where the paint had faded around the frames. Her shoes were gone from the hallway. All 400 pairs, apparently transported to wherever she'd decided to land. The bedroom was the strangest. Half the closet was empty, just bare hangers swaying slightly in the air-conditioning breeze. Her nightstand was cleared off. No more bottles of expensive face cream. No more self-help books about manifesting success. No more charging cables for her 17 different devices. The bathroom had been similarly purged of her presence. No more hair products covering every available surface. No more makeup bags exploding across the counter. No more contact lens solution taking up prime real estate. It was like she'd been erased, carefully removed from my life with surgical precision. And you know what? It felt good. Really good. Like I'd been living in someone else's home for 2 years and finally gotten my space back. I walked around slowly, taking inventory. She'd left the dishes, probably because they were cheap and from Target, not up to her standards. She'd left most of the furniture because, again, not expensive enough to bother with. She'd taken all the fancy kitchen gadgets she'd bought. The espresso machine I'd never learned to use, the stand mixer that had made exactly 3 batches of cookies, the immersion blender that had seemed important at the time, but had spent 2 years and used in a drawer. On the kitchen counter, I found a note. Of course there was a note. This was Clarissa. Everything had to be dramatic, had to have the last word. I picked it up, expecting some final manipulation, some last-ditch effort to make me feel guilty. Instead, it just said, the spare key is on the counter. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. Whatever I was looking for. I almost laughed. I wasn't looking for anything. I'd found something: self-respect, clarity, freedom. But sure, Clarissa, make this about me searching for something, as if I was the one who'd lost my way. I crumpled up the note and threw it in the trash, which was oddly satisfying. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Troy. She's gone. Place is empty. I'm free. He responded immediately. Hell yeah? Want to celebrate? I'm thinking burgers and beer. My treat. Rain check. I texted back. Tonight, I just want to sit in my apartment and enjoy the silence. And that's exactly what I did. I ordered pizza. Not fancy pizza from that artisanal place Clarissa loved, but cheap, greasy, absolutely perfect pizza from the corner spot that delivered in 20 minutes. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, one of the cheap ones I'd been too embarrassed to drink when she was around because she'd made some comment about craft over quantity. I sat on the uncomfortable $3,000 statement piece couch, put my feet up on the coffee table without worrying about water rings, and watched whatever I wanted on TV without someone critiquing my choices. It was the best Friday night I'd had in 2 years. Around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed. Leah, how are you doing? Need company? I'm good. I wrote back honestly. Really, genuinely good. Thank you for everything you did. Seriously, you're a lifesaver. That's what friends do, she replied. Also, for what it's worth, I think you handled this whole thing with way more grace than she deserved. Proud of you. I smiled at my phone, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the beer. Thanks. That means a lot. Later, as I was getting ready for bed in my half-empty bedroom, I realized something. The apartment didn't feel empty. It felt clean, purged, like I'd finally removed an infection I hadn't even known was there. All of Clarissa's improvements, her statement pieces, her vision for our space, none of it had ever been about us. It had always been about her, about creating an environment that reflected her status and success, with me as an accessory that didn't quite match the aesthetic. Now I could rebuild, make this place actually mine, fill it with things I liked, not things I was told I should like. Maybe get my old couch back from wherever it ended up. Hang posters that made me happy instead of art that was supposed to impress people. 2 weeks after Clarissa's dramatic exit from my life and my apartment, I'd settled into a routine that felt almost normal. Work during the day, gym in the evening. I joined one, partly for health and partly because angry exercising is surprisingly therapeutic, and Netflix at night without anyone judging my taste in shows. I'd even bought a new couch, nothing fancy, just comfortable and decidedly not a statement piece. It was glorious. I was sleeping better, eating better, and generally existing better without the constant low-level stress of being married to someone who thought I was an embarrassment. I was in the middle of a particularly satisfying morning. Coffee, bagel, answering emails in my pajamas because working from home has its perks, when my phone buzzed with a text from Leah. The preview made me actually laugh out loud, which scared my neighbor's cat that had been lounging on my fire escape. You sitting down? The text read. I wasn't sitting down, but I immediately sat down, because when someone asks if you're sitting down before delivering news, it's either going to be spectacularly good or catastrophically bad, and given recent events, I was due for some good news. The universe owed me at least that much. I texted back, I am now. Hit me. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Leah was crafting this message carefully, which meant it was going to be good. Finally, the text came through, and it was beautiful. Elliot dumped her. Publicly. At a gala. Last night. I had to read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Elliot, Mr. Synergy himself, the business partner with the Tesla and the stupid hair gel and the yacht photos, had dumped Clarissa. Not just dumped her, but publicly. At a gala. Which meant witnesses, lots of them. Probably the same crowd that had watched her humiliate me at Marcello's. Karma wasn't just real, it was working overtime and apparently had a flair for poetic justice. Details, I texted back in all caps because the situation demanded emphasis. I need details. All of them. Spare nothing. Leah called instead of texting, because some stories are too good to type out. Oh my God, she said the moment I picked up, and I could hear the barely contained glee in her voice. Where do I even start? Okay, so you know the Tech Innovation Gala? The one she's been talking about for months. The one she didn't invite me to because I'd embarrass her? I asked, unable to keep the satisfaction out of my voice. That's the one, Leah confirmed. So apparently, Elliot had no idea she was married. Like, actually no idea. She'd been telling him you were her assistant. Her assistant? Can you believe that? She told him you worked for her, handled her schedule, did her errands, whatever. Basically painted you as her employee. I laughed so hard I actually snorted, which was not attractive but was absolutely justified. Her assistant? Did I at least get a promotion before the breakup? Was I senior assistant? Executive assistant? Assistant to the regional manager? Leah was laughing too now. I don't know what your title was in her fantasy world, but get this. Elliot found out the truth. Someone at the gala, I don't know who, mentioned that Clarissa's husband had finally wised up and left her. Used those exact words, apparently. Elliot was confused, asked what they meant, and boom, the whole story came out. Multiple people told him she was married, had been married for 2 years, and that her assistant was actually her husband who'd recently kicked her out. Oh, this is beautiful, I said, and I meant it. This is the most beautiful thing I've heard in my entire life. What did he do? He confronted her right there in the middle of the gala, in front of everyone. Called her a liar and a fraud. Said he didn't associate with people who had no integrity. Then he walked away, and she tried to follow him. And he literally told her, and I quote because Jessica was there and heard the whole thing, "Don't contact me again. My lawyers will be in touch about dissolving our business partnership." I had to put the phone down for a second because I was laughing too hard to breathe. When I picked it back up, Leah was still talking, clearly on a roll. And then she tried to play it off like it was a misunderstanding, but nobody was buying it. Everyone there knew what had happened at your dinner, knew you'd left her, and now they knew why. Jessica said people were literally turning away from her when she tried to talk to them. She ended up leaving after like 20 minutes, and apparently she was crying in the bathroom before she left. Full mascara running, ugly crying meltdown. "Stop," I said, though I absolutely did not want her to stop. I can only handle so much joy at once. My heart might explode. Oh, but wait, there's more. Leah continued, and I could picture her grinning. She tried to move back to her parents' house. You know, her mom and dad who live in that nice place in Connecticut? I remember them, I said. Clarissa's parents had always been kind to me, surprisingly down-to-earth people who seemed confused about how they'd raised such an ambitious, status-obsessed daughter. Her dad was a retired teacher. Her mom was a librarian. Good people. Salt-of-the-earth types. Her mom kicked her out, Leah said with obvious satisfaction. Told her she was disappointed in her, that she'd raised her better than this, and that she needed to figure out her life before coming home. Her dad apparently didn't even argue, just backed up her mom. They adored you, by the way. Thought you were the grounded one, the good influence. Her mom literally said, you had a good man, and you threw him away for what? Money? Status? Shame on you. I felt an unexpected warmth in my chest. I'd always liked Clarissa's parents, had felt guilty about how the divorce would affect my relationship with them. Knowing they saw through her nonsense, that they'd sided with basic human decency over their own daughter's terrible choices, somehow made everything feel more validated. Where is she now? I asked, genuinely curious. Last I heard, she's staying with her college roommate in Manhattan. Some tiny studio apartment in Hell's Kitchen. Going from your nice Brooklyn place to a studio in Hell's Kitchen has got to sting. Oh, and Jessica also said she's been posting cryptic quotes on Instagram. You know the type. You never know the value of water till the well runs dry, and sometimes the person you'd take a bullet for is the one behind the trigger. Real deep, profound stuff. Honey, I was the whole water supply, I said, feeling philosophical. The well, the pump, the plumbing, and the guy who paid the water bill. But sure, post your little quotes. Very healing. Leah laughed. I love how you're handling this. Most people would be gloating harder. Oh, I'm gloating, I assured her. I'm just doing it with style. There's a difference between satisfaction and being petty. I'm going for satisfaction. Well, you've earned it, she said. Seriously, after everything she put you through, you deserve to enjoy this moment. Karma came through. After we hung up, I sat there for a while, processing everything. Elliot had dumped her. Her parents had rejected her. She'd gone from penthouse dreams to studio apartment reality in the span of 2 weeks. Her carefully constructed facade had crumbled, revealing the truth underneath. That she was someone who valued appearances over authenticity, status over substance, and had burned every genuine relationship in pursuit of something that was never real to begin with. And me? I was sitting in my apartment, comfortable and free, with real friends who actually cared about me, no longer twisting myself into knots trying to be someone I wasn't. I'd lost a wife, but gained my self-respect back. That seemed like a pretty good trade. I pulled up Instagram out of curiosity. I know. I should have had more self-control, and sure enough, there were the cryptic quotes. "You never know the value of water till the well runs dry," posted 2 days ago with a black and white filter that was probably supposed to be artistic, but just looked sad. The comments were mostly emojis and generic "Stay Strong Queen" messages from people who clearly didn't know the full story. I didn't like or comment. Didn't even screenshot it to send to Troy, though he would have appreciated it. I just looked at it for a moment, this digital monument to someone who'd learned consequences the hard way, and then I closed the app. There was something Clarissa had never understood, something that all her ambition and status chasing had blinded her to. Real wealth isn't about money or connections or impressing people at galas. It's about integrity. About having people in your life who know the real you and stick around anyway. About being able to look at yourself in the mirror and like what you see. By those metrics, I was rich. Not billionaire rich, not yacht party rich, but genuinely, meaningfully wealthy in the ways that actually mattered. And Clarissa? She was bankrupt. I texted Troy. Heard about Clarissa's epic downfall. Karma came through. He responded with a gif of someone popping champagne, followed by, "Justice. Want to celebrate? Drinks on me. Thanks, but I'm good." I typed back. Already celebrating in my own way. Mostly just enjoying the peace. "That's probably healthier than my celebration plans," he admitted. "But the offer stands whenever you're ready." I looked around my apartment, my actual apartment now, filled with my stuff, decorated how I wanted, peaceful and comfortable in mine. I thought about Clarissa in her studio in Hell's Kitchen, probably staring at her phone waiting for Elliot to text her back, wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. The thing about being grounded, the quality her parents had appreciated in me, is that when everything falls apart, you don't fall far. You're already on solid ground. But when you build your entire life on a foundation of appearances and lies and status, when everything is about climbing higher and looking down on people beneath you, the fall is spectacular. And I had a front row seat to watch it happen. Grounded, yes. As in not flying on private jets to hotel suites, not measuring my worth by my stock portfolio, not sacrificing my integrity for a seat at the table with rich people who'd forget my name 5 minutes after meeting me. I was grounded, and I'd never been more grateful for solid ground in my entire life. Revenge wasn't sweet, it was peaceful. That's what I realized in the weeks following Clarissa's spectacular implosion. I'd expected to feel vindicated, maybe even a little smug about karma finally catching up with her. Instead, I just felt calm. Like the universe had balanced its books, and I could finally move on without looking over my shoulder. I deleted her number from my phone during a particularly boring Tuesday afternoon. Just scrolled to her contact, stared at it for about 5 seconds, and hit delete. No ceremony, no dramatic screenshot to send to Troy, just gone. Then I went through and blocked her on every social media platform. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, even Twitter, though neither of us really used it. If she wanted to keep posting cryptic quotes about wells running dry, she could do it without me as an audience. The Spotify Premium account was next. That one actually made me laugh out loud. We'd been sharing my account for 2 years, and I'd never thought twice about it. But now? Now she could listen to her heartbreak playlist with ads interrupting every 3 songs. Capitalism's version of karma, and honestly, pretty satisfying. Leah checked on me sometimes, usually with texts like, "You doing okay?" or "Need anything?" which I appreciated more than I could express. Troy celebrated by sending me memes, his love language, apparently. My favorite was the one that said, "System error, cheater not found," with a loading bar stuck at 0%. I laughed for the first time in weeks, a genuine, stomach-hurting laugh that felt like medicine. Humor, I realized, is therapy with better timing and significantly lower copays. Every joke, every sarcastic comment, every moment of finding absurdity in the disaster, it all helped. Not in that toxic, laugh away your pain way, but in the acknowledge how ridiculous this situation is and refuse to let it break you way. I was healing. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. 3 weeks after achieving complete radio silence from Clarissa, I met Maya. Not because I was looking, honestly, dating was the last thing on my mind, but because Troy had forcibly reactivated my Hinge profile, while I was in the bathroom at his place. "You need to get back out there," he'd said when I'd discovered his meddling. "Not to find someone, just to remember that normal women exist." Maya was a third-grade teacher with a golden retriever named Noodles, which was objectively the best dog name I'd ever heard. Her first message to me was, "If you like dogs, sarcasm, and bad puns, I'm your girl. If you don't, I'm also your girl, but we'll have to work on your personality." Challenge absolutely accepted. Our first date lasted 4 hours. We met for coffee, ironically at Daily Grind, because apparently that place was determined to feature in every major chapter of my romantic life, and ended up walking through Prospect Park with Noodles, talking about everything and nothing. No designer dresses, no talk about stock portfolios or business synergy, just real conversation with someone who laughed at my jokes and didn't make me feel like I needed to apologize for existing. When she asked, "So when do I get to meet your friends?" I didn't panic or make excuses. I just grinned and said, "Whenever you want. They're pretty great, actually. One of them is responsible for us matching, so you kind of owe him." She laughed, that genuine kind that makes her eyes crinkle. "Good answer. Most guys either want to keep you secret or introduce you to their mom on the second date. You seem refreshingly normal." "I've been told I'm grounded," I said, and for the first time, it didn't feel like an insult. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I was walking on air, with a woman who thought I was enough exactly as I was. About 2 months after Maya and I started dating, Leah sent me a screenshot. Clarissa had posted another cryptic quote on Instagram. "You never know the value of water till the well runs dry." She'd apparently recycled it, because growth and self-awareness weren't really her strong suits. I showed it to Maya, who was sitting on my new couch, the comfortable one, with Noodles sprawled across her lap like a 60-pound blanket. She read it, raised an eyebrow, and said, "Is she talking about you? Because that's adorable. Honey, you were the whole water supply, the well, and the guy who maintained the infrastructure." She didn't lose water. She lost a fully operational utility company. I laughed so hard I snorted, which made Noodles bark in confusion. This was my life now, laughing at my ex-wife's Instagram posts with my girlfriend and her golden retriever, feeling nothing but mild amusement where there used to be pain. "You know what's funny?" I said, scratching Noodles behind the ears. "I don't hate her anymore. I actually think I should thank her. Without her arrogance and that spectacular dinner disaster, I'd never have discovered my spine, or my sense of humor, or you." Maya smiled, that warm, genuine smile that still made my stomach flip in the best way. "Well, I'm definitely grateful to her terrible life choices. Though I'm more grateful to Troy for reactivating your Hinge profile. We should probably buy him a thank you gift," I said. "Already did. Send him a case of craft beer with a note that says, 'Thanks for being a meddling genius.'" That's when I knew I'd found something real. Someone who understood that friendship mattered, that loyalty was currency, that the small gestures meant more than grand declarations. Troy had sent back a photo of himself holding a beer with the caption, "Best Wingman Award goes to me." "You're welcome. When's the wedding?" I call best man. We weren't anywhere near that yet, but for the first time, the idea didn't terrify me. Marriage didn't have to be what I'd experienced with Clarissa, walking on eggshells, shrinking yourself, constantly auditioning for approval. It could be what I had with Maya. Easy laughter, genuine conversation, someone who thought my Target shopping habits were endearing rather than embarrassing. Now I knew the real meaning of wealth. It wasn't fancy dinners or synergy or impressing people who'd forget your name the next day. It was peace. It was loyalty. It was people who laughed with you, not at you. It was waking up and not dreading the day ahead. It was being yourself without apology. So when people asked, and they did, usually with that nosy curiosity that people have about messy divorces, "Would you ever take Clarissa back?" I just smiled and said, "Don't worry, she won't have to," because I'd found something better than the life I'd lost. I'd found myself again, and that was worth more than all the statement pieces and yacht parties in the world. Clarissa could keep her cryptic quotes and her well metaphors. I had peace, and that made me the richest man in Brooklyn.